Picture this, a single, narrow beam of golden light, piercing the deep darkness of an ancient, sealed chamber. For 17 incredible minutes, this ray of sunlight travels slowly along a stone passageway, finally illuminating a spiral-carved stone at the very heart of a massive, man-made mound. This isn't a scene from a fantasy film. This is a real event that has occurred like clockwork every year for over 5,000 years. It happens at Newgrange, a monumental tomb in Ireland, and it marks the dawn of the winter solstice. But here is the question that has captivated and confounded historians, archaeologists, and astronomers for centuries. How did a Stone Age society, a people thousands of years before the invention of metal tools, let alone written language, achieve such a breathtakingly precise feat of engineering and astronomy? How did they align this massive structure so perfectly with the movements of the sun, an accomplishment that would remain unrivaled for millennia? To fully grasp the scale of this mystery, you need to understand just how ancient Newgrange truly is. This massive circular mound covered in white quartz and spanning an entire acre was built around 3200 BCE. That means it is older than Stonehenge. It is older than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. When the first stones of Newgrange were being set in place, woolly mammoths still roamed parts of the earth. This was a time before the wheel was in common use, a time when humanity was supposedly in its infancy. Yet here stands Newgrange, a testament not to primitive survival, but to profound sophistication, a building project that would have required immense social organization, architectural skill, and a deep, intimate knowledge of the cosmos. It forces us to completely reconsider what we think we know about our ancient ancestors and their capabilities. This video is an invitation to join a journey back through time, to explore one of history's most compelling architectural and astronomical puzzles. We are going to walk in the footsteps of those Neolithic builders, to investigate how they might have accomplished this and to ask what it meant to them. Was it merely a sophisticated calendar, a way to mark the return of the sun and the promise of spring? Or was it something more profound, a spiritual gateway, a place where the living could commune with the dead, blessed by the sun's life-giving light on the year's darkest day? We will uncover the secrets etched into its stones and delve into the minds of the people who, against all odds, left a permanent mark on the landscape and on human history. This is the story of Newgrange, a place where stone, sky, and human ambition meet in a silent, stunning mystery that continues to whisper to us across 50 centuries. For centuries, the Great Mound was simply part of the landscape, a large, grassy hill that local farmers knew as part of their world. It wasn't until the late 17th century that it was officially noted as an ancient monument, but even then, its true nature remained hidden, shrouded under centuries of soil and turf. The real turning point, the moment Newgrange was pulled from obscurity and into the global spotlight, began in earnest in the 1960s under the meticulous direction of Professor Michael J. O'Kelly. His work would not just restore a tomb, it would rewrite a chapter of human history. The initial excavation was a monumental task in itself. Teams carefully began removing the tons of earth and stone that had slid down the sides over millennia, and in doing so, they revealed the stunning white quartz wall that now defines the structure's facade. This wasn't a rough heap of stones, it was a beautifully engineered and decorated wall, a clear signal that they were dealing with something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. But the most breathtaking discovery was yet to come. As workers cleared the main entrance obstructed by a massive fallen slab, they noticed something peculiar just above the doorway. A small, rectangular opening was carefully built into the roof of the passage, a feature that had been completely blocked by debris and was entirely invisible from the outside. Professor O'Kelly called this the roof box. It was an architectural puzzle. Its purpose wasn't immediately obvious. Why would builders go to such trouble to create a small, elevated opening above the main entrance? The answer came on the winter solstice of 1967. For the first time in possibly thousands of years, Professor O'Kelly stood inside the cold, dark chamber as the sun began to rise. He watched, likely with a sense of overwhelming awe, as a thin shaft of sunlight entered through that very roof box. The beam of light didn't just flood the chamber. It traveled with deliberate slowness along the passage floor, reaching all the way to the rear chamber, and for 17 minutes, it brilliantly illuminated the intricate spiral carvings on the back stone. In that moment, everything changed. Newgrange was instantly transformed in the eyes of the modern world. It was no longer just a tomb for the dead. It was a precise astronomical instrument, a cathedral built to capture a single, specific ray of sunlight on the shortest day of the year. This one discovery forced a dramatic shift in our perception of Neolithic people. They were not just simple farmers struggling for survival. They were master architects, keen observers of the heavens, and spiritual visionaries who encoded their deep understanding of the cosmos into stone and earth. The roof box was the key that unlocked this new understanding, proving that human curiosity and genius were alive and thriving over 5,000 years ago. To truly appreciate the marvel of Newgrange, we must first step back and anchor ourselves in the sheer, staggering depth of its age. This structure was built around 3,200 BCE. That is a date so remote it can feel almost abstract, so let's make it concrete. Newgrange is more than 5,000 years old. To put that into perspective, it predates England's Stonehenge by about 1,000 years. It is older than the first stones of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt by roughly 6 centuries. When the first foundation stones of Newgrange were being carefully laid into place, the legendary city of Troy from Homer's epics was still millennia in the future. This was a world without written records, without metal tools, a world where society was organized around farming and family. Yet, these people orchestrated a construction project of immense ambition and precision, a feat that stands as a silent challenge to any notion of linear human progress. They were not simply building for the moment, they were building for eternity, creating a monument meant to endure across ages they themselves could never witness. This incredible antiquity isn't an isolated fact. Newgrange is the most famous jewel in a denser crown, the Brú na Bóinne complex, which translates to the Palace of the Boyne. This area, nestled in a graceful bend of the River Boyne, was far more than a simple burial ground. It was a thriving hub of Neolithic activity, a spiritual and ceremonial center of profound importance. Alongside Newgrange, 2 other massive passage tombs, Noth and Dowth, form the core of this complex. Noth is particularly astounding, containing nearly 1/3 of all known megalithic art in all of Western Europe on its stones. Imagine this landscape 5 millennia ago, a hive of coordinated human endeavor. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people would have been at work quarrying the enormous stones, transporting them from miles away, shaping the brilliant white quartz for the facade, and organizing the tons of earth and rock needed to create these massive permanent mounds. This was a society capable of incredible social organization, with a shared vision and the skilled labor to bring it to life. The concentration of such monumental architecture in this one valley tells us something vital. This was a sacred landscape, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds were understood to intersect. The River Boyne itself, named for the Celtic goddess Bone, was likely considered a source of life and a pathway to the otherworld long before the tombs were even conceived. Building these immense structures here was a way to root their cosmology into the earth, to mark this place as a permanent center of their world. The construction of Newgrange, Noth, and Dowth was not a single event but part of a sustained, centuries-long project that transformed the entire valley into a testament to their beliefs, their astronomical knowledge, and their collective identity. This was the Silicon Valley of its day, not for technology, but for spirituality, innovation, and architectural genius. It was a place where the leading minds of the time came together to push the boundaries of what was possible, creating legacies in stone that would outlast languages, empires, and entire eras of human history. Standing before Newgrange today, you are confronted by a structure of almost impossible scale. This is not a small burial mound, it is a colossal man-made hill that dominates the landscape. The mound itself stretches 85 meters in diameter, covering a full acre of land. To construct it, the Neolithic builders moved an estimated 200,000 tons of stone and earth. Let that number sink in for a moment, 200,000 tons. This was all accomplished without the wheel, without metal tools, and without domesticated animals like horses or oxen to aid in transport. Every single stone, every basket of earth was moved by human hands. The stones themselves, including the massive greywacke slabs that form the passage and chamber, were likely quarried from sites kilometers away, possibly rafted up the River Boyne before being dragged up the hill to this site. The white quartz that sparkles on the facade was sourced from the Wicklow Mountains, over 70 kilometers to the south. This was a logistically breathtaking operation, a project that would have required a highly organized society with a shared, powerful vision, mobilizing generations of workers toward a single, enduring goal. Encircling the base of this great mound is a ring of 97 massive curbstones. These are not small pebbles, they are immense, vertically set slabs that act as a retaining wall, holding the entire structure together. But they are so much more than just structural supports. Each curbstone is a potential canvas, and many are covered in some of the most fascinating and enigmatic art from the ancient world. The most famous of these is the magnificent entrance stone. This is a vast, heavily decorated slab that sits directly in front of the passage entrance, and it is covered in a complex, swirling pattern of spirals, lozenges, and concentric circles. The most prominent feature is a stunning triple spiral motif, a symbol that has become almost synonymous with Newgrange itself. The carving is deep and precise, executed with stone tools on incredibly hard rock, a testament to immense skill and patience. So what do these symbols mean? While we can never know their exact meaning with certainty, most researchers believe this art is not merely decorative. It is likely a symbolic language, a representation of the builder's cosmological beliefs. The spirals could depict the journey of the sun, mirroring the solstice beam's path into the chamber. They might represent the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, the same cycle celebrated by the returning sun at the winter solstice. The concentric circles and lozenges could symbolize portals to other worlds or maps of the cosmos as they understood it. The entrance stone, in particular, is strategically positioned. It sits as a guardian to the sacred passage, its intricate carvings potentially serving as a warning, an invitation, or a set of spiritual instructions for those about to enter the realm of the ancestors. This transforms the entire structure from a simple tomb into a complex ritual landscape. The act of walking past this carved stone, of moving from the world of the living into the darkness of the mound, was likely a profound spiritual transition, guided by the symbols that encapsulated their entire worldview. This combination of raw, physical power and delicate, symbolic artistry is what makes Newgrange so compelling. It demonstrates a society that valued both immense collective labor and profound abstract thought. They possessed the brute strength to reshape a hillside, and the intellectual sophistication to encode their understanding of the universe into the very stones that held their creation together. The curbstones are the permanent library of this lost civilization, their pages written not in ink but in meticulously chiseled rock, waiting for thousands of years for us to begin deciphering their message. But to truly grasp the ingenuity of Newgrange, you must step inside, moving from the vast, sunlit exterior into the silent, waiting darkness of the passage. The entrance is a narrow, deliberate opening, leading you into a long corridor that stretches 19 meters into the heart of the mound. This is not a wide, welcoming hallway. It is a confined, stone-lined tunnel that forces you to walk single file, your shoulders nearly brushing against the massive, upright stones on either side. With every step forward, the daylight at your back fades, and the weight of the entire structure seems to press down around you. This journey inward is a powerful sensory experience, a deliberate transition from the world of the living to a realm designed for the eternal. The passage itself rises gradually as you move deeper, climbing toward the central chamber, building a sense of anticipation with every footfall. After this long, dark walk, the passage suddenly opens up and you find yourself standing in the central chamber. The space is not a simple round room. It is a spectacular example of cruciform or cross-shaped architecture. From a central space, 3 recesses or smaller chambers branch off to the left, right, and directly ahead. This layout creates a profound sense of ordered, sacred space. Each of these 3 recesses is a small, intimate alcove, and it is here that the remains of the departed were placed. Large, intricately carved stone basins, which once held the cremated bones of select individuals, were found in these recesses, suggesting this was a tomb reserved for a privileged few, perhaps chieftains, priests, or powerful spiritual leaders of the community. The air in this chamber is still and cool, a constant temperature maintained by the incredible insulation of the thousands of tons of stone and earth surrounding you. It is a place that feels both immense and intimate, a house for the dead that was clearly built with immense care and purpose. Looking up from within this chamber, you are met with one of the most brilliant architectural achievements of the ancient world, the corbelled vault roof. This is not a single, massive capstone, but a masterpiece of precise stonework. The technique involves laying flat stones in overlapping, concentric circles, with each ring placed slightly inward of the one below it. Gradually, layer by layer, the circle closes, forming a soaring, beehive-shaped dome that towers 6 meters above the chamber floor. The genius of this design is that it is entirely self-supporting. The weight of the stones is perfectly distributed down the walls, creating a stable, durable structure. The most astonishing fact is that this roof has remained completely intact and, crucially, waterproof for over 5,000 years. Not a single drop of water from the Irish rain and soil above has penetrated this inner sanctum. This is an engineering triumph that many modern structures would envy, a testament to a level of architectural foresight and skill that seems to defy its Neolithic origins. The final layer of sacred artistry within this chamber is found on the very stones that form its walls. Towering orthostats, these massive standing stones, line the chamber and its recesses. Many of these are not blank slabs. They are adorned with the same enigmatic megalithic art found on the curbstones outside. But here, in the perpetual darkness, they take on an even deeper, more mysterious quality. Spirals, zigzags, chevrons, and concentric circles are pecked into the hard stone surfaces. In the right-hand recess, one of the most famous stones features a beautiful, deep triple spiral, a mirror of the one on the entrance stone outside. The presence of this art deep inside the tomb, in a space that would have been plunged into darkness for all but a few minutes each year, is profoundly significant. It suggests this art was not primarily for human appreciation, at least not in a conventional sense. These symbols were likely meant for the spirits of the ancestors, for the deities of the other world, or as a permanent spiritual map guiding the souls of the departed. The chamber, therefore, served a powerful dual purpose. It was a practical tomb, a final resting place for physical remains, but it was also a profoundly sacred space, a cosmic engine designed to facilitate a connection between the world of the living, the realm of the dead, and the cyclical power of the sun, which pierced its darkness once a year in a dramatic display of celestial alignment. And all of this architectural genius, the immense mound, the precise passage, the soaring corbelled roof, culminates in one single, breathtaking feature, the roof box. This is the heart of the Newgrange mystery, the element that transforms the entire structure from a remarkable tomb into a celestial observatory of stunning accuracy. Perched directly above the main entrance, this is not a large opening. It is a narrow, rectangular slit measuring just about 90 centimeters wide and 20 centimeters high. It's framed by two large, upright stones and topped by an enormous, carefully angled slab that acts as a lintel, a permanent roof for this stone window. To the casual observer, it might seem like an insignificant detail, but in reality, this small aperture is the key to the entire solstice phenomenon. Its construction was a feat of meticulous engineering. The massive slab that forms its roof is not laid flat. It is intentionally tilted, set at a specific downward angle. This was not an accident. This precise angle is what allows the low-lying rays of the winter solstice sun, which crests a hill on the horizon over 10 miles away, to slide perfectly beneath it and enter the chamber. This tilt effectively catches the sunbeam and directs it down the passageway like a laser guide. The intentionality behind this design is undeniable. The roof box was not an afterthought or a structural necessity. It was the very reason the passage was built with such a specific orientation in the first place. The entire 19-meter-long corridor is aligned to an azimuth of approximately 142 degrees, pointing directly toward the spot on the horizon where the sun rises on the shortest day of the year. For the alignment to work, the builders had to possess a deep, long-term understanding of the solar cycle. They needed to know not just the general direction of the sunrise, but the exact position it would occupy on that single critical day. This implies years, perhaps even generations, of patient observation. Someone had to stand on that hill, season after season, year after year, marking the sun's southernmost point on the horizon, noting how it seemed to stand still for a few days around the solstice before beginning its slow journey north again. They then had to translate that celestial observation into a permanent, massive earthwork, ensuring that a beam of light would travel a precise path to a specific point inside a building that would not be completed in their own lifetime. This level of foresight and precision is what separates Newgrange from other ancient monuments. It speaks to a society that was not merely aware of the heavens, but was actively engaged in a dialogue with them, seeking to capture a moment of cosmic power in stone. This was a deliberately engineered window to the heavens, a mechanism designed for one purpose: to harness and commemorate a specific celestial event. The 17-minute spectacle of light was not a happy accident that someone noticed after the tomb was built. It was the central event around which the entire structure was conceived. We can imagine the significance this held for them. For an agricultural society, the winter solstice was a time of deep anxiety and profound hope. The days were at their shortest, the sun at its weakest, and the threat of famine was very real. The gradual weakening of the sun could have been seen as a cosmic battle, a time when the powers of darkness and light were in a delicate balance. The successful penetration of the sun's light into the deepest, darkest part of their sacred tomb, the realm of their ancestors, would have been a powerful symbol of victory. It was a divine assurance that the sun had not been defeated, that the cycle would continue, and that life would return to the land. The illumination of the spirals in the back chamber, symbols often associated with life and rebirth, would have reinforced this message perfectly. The sun was not just returning, it was re-entering the womb of the earth, symbolically fertilizing it to ensure the regeneration of life in the spring. The roof box, therefore, stands as a Neolithic masterstroke, a perfect fusion of spiritual belief, astronomical knowledge, and architectural genius. It demonstrates a worldview where the celestial and the earthly were intimately connected, where the cycles of the cosmos directly influenced the fate of the community. By building this precise opening, the people of Newgrange were not just passive observers of the sky, they were active participants in the cosmic order. They created a machine that allowed them to witness, year after year, the reaffirmation of their most fundamental belief, that even in the deepest darkness, the light would always return. Now, let's step into that chamber on the one morning of the year when its true purpose is revealed. Imagine it is a cold, clear dawn around the 21st of December. You are one of the very few people selected by a highly competitive lottery, granted the privilege of standing in the absolute darkness of Newgrange's inner sanctum. The air is silent and still, heavy with the chill of 5,000 years. You have been waiting in this profound blackness for what feels like an eternity, your eyes straining to see anything at all. Every sense is heightened. Then, as the sun begins to crest the horizon far across the Boyne Valley, a hush falls over the small group. For a few agonizing seconds, nothing happens. And then you see it, a single hair-thin sliver of golden light. It appears with sudden clarity, striking the floor of the passage just beyond the entrance. This is not a gentle, diffused glow. It is a sharp, brilliant blade of light, a laser beam forged by the sun and perfectly framed by the roof box above. As the sun climbs infinitesimally higher, this beam begins to elongate, creeping with deliberate, almost living slowness up the 19-meter passageway toward you. It widens gradually, transforming from a thin line into a widening river of gold that illuminates the ancient carved stones on either side, revealing spirals and symbols that have been hidden in the dark for a full year. The light moves with a tangible sense of purpose, as if guided by an unseen hand, pushing back the oppressive darkness that has reigned for so long. The entire journey from the entrance to the back recess takes about 4 minutes, a slow, majestic procession of light that feels both impossibly ancient and shockingly immediate. When the beam finally reaches the central chamber and strikes the magnificent triple spiral on the back stone, the entire room is bathed in a warm, ethereal golden light. For the next 17 minutes, this illumination holds, transforming the cold, dark tomb into a radiant, sacred space. The intricate carvings on the orthostat seem to awaken, their grooves and curves highlighted with a dramatic intensity. In this moment, the boundary between the ancient past and the present completely dissolves. You are no longer just a tourist in a historic site. You are a witness to the exact same event that the builders meticulously planned for, an event that has unfolded with unwavering precision for over 5 millennia. The emotional impact is overwhelming, a powerful mix of awe, humility, and a profound connection to the countless generations of humans who have understood the significance of this celestial moment. For the Neolithic farmers who built Newgrange, this annual event was far more than a spectacular light show. It was the pivotal moment of their year, laden with deep spiritual and practical meaning. As an agricultural society, their entire existence was tied to the seasons. The weeks leading up to the winter solstice were a time of increasing dread. The sun was weakening, the days were shrinking, and the world was growing colder and darker. Stored food supplies were running low, and the threat of starvation was a very real fear. In their worldview, the sun wasn't just a distant star, it was a life-giving deity whose power was visibly waning. There was a genuine, existential anxiety that the light might continue to fade, that the sun might not return, and that eternal winter would consume the world. The successful penetration of the sun's light into the deepest, most sacred part of their world, the chamber of their ancestors, was the ultimate divine reassurance. It was the moment the sun was symbolically reborn. The darkness had been defeated. The proof was this brilliant, undeniable beam of light reaching into the womb of the earth itself, re-fertilizing the land and guaranteeing the return of spring, the renewal of crops, and the continuation of life. The illumination of the spirals, symbols we strongly associate with cycles and rebirth, would have powerfully reinforced this message. This was not a passive observation of a solar cycle. It was an active, communal participation in the cosmic order. By building this structure, they had created a mechanism to not only predict this critical turning point, but to physically capture it, to bring the reborn sun into the house of their dead, uniting the cycles of human life, death, and celestial power into a single, breathtaking 17-minute ritual. This was their new year, their greatest religious festival, and their guarantee of survival, all encapsulated in a shaft of light traveling slowly across a stone floor. To understand the staggering accomplishment of the Newgrange alignment, you need to look beyond the stones and earth to the sky itself, and to a concept known as solar declination. In simplest terms, solar declination is the latitude on Earth where the sun is directly overhead at noon on any given day. This point moves north and south between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn throughout the year. At the winter solstice, the sun reaches its most southerly declination, its lowest and weakest point in the sky for those living in the northern hemisphere. The builders of Newgrange didn't just need to know the general direction of the sunrise, they needed to pinpoint the exact azimuth, the precise compass bearing, of the sun's first gleam on that single critical day. This required observing the sun's position at sunrise over many years, noting how it moved along the horizon, and identifying the southernmost limit of that journey, the point where it appeared to stand still for a few days before beginning its slow return north. This alone was a feat of long-term, meticulous observation, but the challenge was even more profound because of a slow, grand celestial cycle known as the precession of the Earth's axis. Our planet wobbles like a spinning top very slowly over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years. This means the position of the stars, and to a very slight but measurable degree, the precise point of the solstice sunrise on the horizon, shifts imperceptibly over centuries. The alignment we see at Newgrange today is not exactly the same as it was 5,000 years ago. For the beam of light to have entered the chamber as perfectly as it did at the time of its construction, the builders had to have established their baseline observations over a period spanning several generations. A single lifetime of watching the sun would not have been enough to account for this gradual drift with the precision required. This implies a culture capable of transmitting complex astronomical data orally across centuries, a sustained intellectual tradition where knowledge was carefully preserved and passed down, allowing them to engineer a structure that would remain accurate for millennia. It speaks to a society that was thinking not in years but in ages. This incredible precision sits at the heart of a long-standing debate among archaeologists and astronomers. What was the primary purpose of Newgrange? Was it a colossal calendar, a religious temple, or an inseparable fusion of both? The calendar theory is powerfully compelling, especially for an agricultural society. Knowing the exact date of the winter solstice was pragmatically vital. It marked the turning point, the moment to begin planning for the spring planting. The gradual return of the sun and the lengthening days signaled that it was time to prepare the fields and to trust that the cycle of life was beginning anew. In this view, Newgrange was a giant Stone Age alarm clock, a fail-safe mechanism to announce the most important date of the year with unerring accuracy. The survival of the entire community could have depended on this precise timing, yet to see Newgrange as merely a practical tool feels inadequate. The immense effort, the artistic symbolism, and the sheer theatricality of the solstice event point to a purpose that was overwhelmingly spiritual. This was likely a temple where the community's most profound beliefs about life, death, and the cosmos were enacted. The journey of the sun into the chamber of the ancestors powerfully symbolized a union between the life-giving sun and the generative power of the earth and the ancestral spirits. It was a dramatic, tangible demonstration that death was not an end, but part of an eternal cycle of renewal, a belief that would have provided immense comfort and cosmological order. There is a third, equally fascinating dimension to consider: the social and political power that such esoteric knowledge would have conferred. The ability to predict the sun's rebirth was not a common skill. It likely resided with a small, elite group, a priestly class or a lineage of ruling elders. Imagine the scene: the entire community, shrouded in the cold and anxiety of deep winter, gathers at the entrance to the great mound. They wait in the darkness, their hope fading with the weakening sun. Then, the appointed spiritual leaders emerge from the tomb to announce that the miracle has occurred once again, that the sun has entered the sacred chamber and life will return. This was not just a prediction, it was a controlled spectacle. By monopolizing the knowledge and the ritual, this elite class could demonstrate their unique connection to the divine, legitimizing their authority and ensuring social cohesion. The alignment, therefore, was not just an astronomical tool or a religious symbol. It was also an instrument of social control, a permanent stone structure that reinforced a power structure by staging a direct, annual conversation with the gods. In the end, Newgrange was likely all these things at once: a precise calendar, a profound temple, and a powerful political statement. It stands as a testament to a society sophisticated enough to weave science, spirituality, and statecraft into a single, enduring monument that continues to speak to us across 50 centuries. When we think of calendars today, we imagine digital notifications on our phones or paper grids on the wall. But for the people of the Neolithic, tracking time was a matter of survival, woven directly into their observation of the natural world. Newgrange is a supreme example of this, but it stands apart from other potential calendar sites in a crucial way. Many ancient timekeeping methods were active, requiring a person to stand at a specific point and observe a shadow or an alignment against a distant peak. Think of the famous sun dagger at Fajada Butte in New Mexico, where a sliver of light moves across a spiral petroglyph. That requires a human observer to be present and interpret the sign. Newgrange is fundamentally different. It is a passive architectural calendar. Once built, it required no human intervention to perform its function. The sun would enter the roof box whether anyone was inside to witness it or not. The monument itself became the observer, a machine that confirmed the turning of the year with absolute automated certainty. This shift from active observation to passive, engineered confirmation represents a leap in technological and philosophical thought. It's the difference between using a sundial and building a clock that chimes on the hour by itself. This incredible precision likely served a more practical ritual purpose than marking a single, fleeting moment, while the perfect alignment creates that breathtaking beam of light on the actual solstice. The low angle of the sun around that time means the chamber would have received some degree of illumination for a few days before and after the pivotal date. This creates what we might call a solstice window, a period of perhaps 4 or 5 days centered on the shortest day. This extended time frame makes profound sense from a ceremonial perspective. It transforms a 1-minute astronomical event into a manageable ritual period. The community wasn't racing against a stopwatch. They had a sacred window during which they could gather, perform ceremonies, and await the confirmation of the sun's rebirth. The peak of the light show on the true solstice would have been the climactic moment of these festivities, the ultimate proof that their rituals had been successful and the cosmic order was restored. This extended calendar period allowed for a more sustained and socially significant celebration, turning a solar event into a foundational community festival that reinforced social bonds and shared identity. How was this intricate knowledge of the solar cycle preserved and transmitted across generations in a society without writing? The construction of Newgrange implies a multi-generational project, meaning the individual who laid the final stone never knew the person who first plotted the sun's southernmost rise. This points to a highly sophisticated and resilient oral tradition. Knowledge wasn't just casually remembered, it was systematically encoded. We can speculate that this cosmic wisdom was embedded in myths, stories, and songs, passed down through a specialized group, a priestly class, or a lineage of astronomer priests. These individuals would have been the guardians of this sacred knowledge, training their successors from a young age. The stories wouldn't have been simple tales, they would have been mnemonic devices, rich with symbolic details that correlated to astronomical events. A story about a hero entering a dark cave and being met by a golden light might have been a way to remember the solstice phenomenon. The intricate spirals carved on the stones themselves could have served as physical aids for these oral teachings, a permanent visual reference for concepts explained in song and ritual. The monument became a living repository, a stone and earth textbook that each generation could use to verify and contextualize the oral wisdom they received. This long-term celestial observation connects Newgrange to a wider Neolithic world that was increasingly looking to the skies for order and meaning. From the stone circles of Orkney to the alignments of Karnak in France, we see evidence of cultures independently discovering the rhythms of the cosmos. Yet, Newgrange remains unique in its combination of scale, precision, and permanence. It is not a circle of standing stones open to the sky. It is an enclosed, engineered space where the celestial event happens inside the architecture. This internalization of the cosmos is its masterstroke. It doesn't just point to the sun. It brings the sun inside, marrying the celestial and the chthonic, the sky god and the earth mother, in a single dramatic union. This transforms it from a simple observatory into a cosmic engine, a place where the powers of the universe were not just observed but were invited in and harnessed for the spiritual and physical well-being of the entire community. The knowledge required to build it, preserved through song and story and set in unyielding stone, represents one of humanity's earliest and most ambitious attempts to build a permanent dialogue with the universe, a conversation that we can still witness 5,000 years later. So who were these master builders, these anonymous architects of a 5,000-year mystery? They were the Neolithic people of the Boyne Valley, a society at a pivotal point in human history. Just a few centuries before, their ancestors had been mobile hunter-gatherers, living in small bands and following the seasonal migrations of game and the growth of wild plants. But here, in the rich, fertile lands of the Boyne, they had made a revolutionary transition. They had become settled farmers, cultivating crops like wheat and barley and domesticating animals such as cattle, sheep, and pigs. This shift from foraging to farming was the essential precondition for a project like Newgrange. Agriculture creates a food surplus. For the first time, not every single member of the community needed to be directly involved in the daily struggle for sustenance. This surplus of food, in turn, created a surplus of labor. It freed up large numbers of people to devote their time and energy to something that wasn't immediately about survival. They could become specialist stone carvers, quarry workers, project organizers, and astronomers. The very existence of Newgrange is a powerful testament to the success of their agricultural revolution. The land was now providing enough for them to think beyond tomorrow, to envision a legacy in stone that would outlast them by millennia. Organizing this labor force required a sophisticated social structure, one far more complex than the relatively egalitarian bands of their hunter-gatherer forebears. To coordinate the movement of 200,000 tons of material, to manage the decades-long timeline, and to orchestrate the specialized skills required, there must have been a central authority. This was likely not a society of complete equals. We can infer the presence of a ruling elite, perhaps a chieftain or a council of elders, combined with a powerful priestly class. These were the individuals who could command the vision and the respect necessary to see such an immense project through to completion. They were the planners and the managers, the ones who could mobilize the community around a shared spiritual and cultural goal. This doesn't necessarily mean it was a society of slaves and tyrants. The construction of Newgrange may have been a communal act of faith, a project that bestowed honor and social status upon all who participated. Contributing to the great tomb could have been a religious duty, a way to earn prestige, or a means of connecting one's family to a permanent center of cosmic power. In this view, the social structure was a pyramid of collective belief, with the spiritual elite at the apex directing the energy and devotion of the entire community. The workforce itself would have been highly stratified, a hive of different specialists all working in concert. At the top were the master architects and astronomers, the individuals who possessed the profound knowledge of solar movements and structural engineering. They were the ones who calculated the precise orientation of the passage and designed the self-supporting corbelled roof. Then there were the skilled artisans, the stone carvers who spent years patiently pecking the intricate spirals and symbols into the hard rock using nothing more than stone chisels. There were the quarrymen who knew how to identify and extract the perfect slabs of greywacke and granite. There were the haulers and movers, the strong backs who transported these multi-ton stones across kilometers of landscape, possibly using rollers, sledges, and rafts. And finally, there were the countless laborers who gathered the endless baskets of earth and stone to build the great mound itself. This was not a chaotic mob, it was a well-oiled machine, a society that had learned to divide labor with incredible efficiency for a singular, transcendent purpose. While they left no written records to tell us their names or their personal stories, they did leave behind a vivid, if cryptic, record of their spiritual world in the art that covers Newgrange. The recurring motifs of spirals, circles, and zigzags are not random doodles. They are a symbolic language, a window into their cosmology. The spiral, in particular, is almost certainly a representation of cyclic time and rebirth. The journey of the sun, the cycle of the seasons, the path of life, death, and regeneration. This symbolism is powerfully reinforced by the tomb's central function, the winter solstice light show. Their entire belief system appears to have been built around this fundamental idea of renewal. They saw themselves as part of a great cosmic cycle where the sun, the earth, and their ancestors were all intimately connected. The tomb was not just a cemetery, it was a place of power, a liminal space where the veil between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors was thinnest. By bringing the sun into this chamber, they were performing a sacred marriage, uniting the life-giving power of the sky with the generative power of the earth and the ancestral spirits. This was a deeply animistic worldview where the landscape itself, the river Boyne, the hills, the very stones was alive with spiritual presence. Newgrange was their ultimate expression of this belief, a permanent prayer built into the land to ensure that the cycle of life would never be broken. Walking among the stones of Newgrange is like wandering through an open-air art gallery from a forgotten age. The sheer volume of carvings is staggering, transforming the monument into a vast canvas of symbolic expression. These are not random scratches or simple decorations. This is megalithic art, a complex and intentional language of symbols pecked into the hard rock with painstaking effort, and it speaks volumes about the inner world of its creators. To understand Newgrange fully, we need to learn to read this stone lexicon. The artists worked with a distinct and recurring visual vocabulary, primarily composed of four powerful motifs: the spiral, the lozenge, the zigzag, and the concentric circle. Each of these forms carries its own weight and potential meaning. The spiral is perhaps the most iconic, a coiled, dynamic line that seems to draw the eye inward or push it outward in an endless loop. Then there is the lozenge, a diamond-shaped figure that often appears in linked chains, creating a net-like pattern across the stone surface. The zigzag or chevron is a series of sharp, angular lines, reminiscent of flowing water, lightning, or a difficult path. And finally, the concentric circle, a set of rings sharing a common center, echoing the form of a target or a ripple spreading across a pond. Unraveling the meaning behind these symbols is one of archaeology's most fascinating challenges, as there is no Rosetta Stone to provide a direct translation. Scholars have proposed several compelling interpretations, each offering a different window into the Neolithic mind. One of the earliest and most straightforward theories is that the art is purely decorative, an aesthetic enhancement to a sacred space. Yet, given the immense effort required to carve these designs into unyielding stone with simple tools, and their placement in dark, inaccessible parts of the tomb, this explanation feels insufficient. The art was clearly meant for more than just human admiration. Another provocative idea is that these carvings represent an early form of written language, a system of proto-writing where each symbol conveyed a specific concept or name. A spiral might mean sun or journey. A lozenge could signify land or ancestor. While we may never crack the code completely, this theory positions the stones as permanent records, perhaps denoting the lineage of those buried within or the rituals that were to be performed. A more celestial interpretation suggests these carvings could be a map of the stars. The precise astronomical knowledge demonstrated by the solstice alignment makes it plausible that the people of Newgrange were also keen observers of the night sky. The patterns of concentric circles and spirals could chart the movements of planets or the positions of important stars, turning the tomb into a three-dimensional cosmic map. This would seamlessly connect the architecture, which tracks the sun, with the art, which records the wider cosmos. Perhaps the most psychologically intriguing theory connects the art to altered states of consciousness. The repetitive, rhythmic patterns of spirals and zigzags are strikingly similar to the geometric patterns known as phosphenes that humans see when entering trance states, whether through sensory deprivation, rhythmic drumming, or the use of psychoactive substances. If shamanic journeys were part of their spiritual practice, these carvings could be depictions of the visionary landscapes traversed by these spiritual specialists, a permanent record of the path to the otherworld. Each major motif invites its own rich layer of interpretation, and the spiral is undoubtedly the star of this symbolic show. Its coiled form is a natural representation of cyclical movement. It can beautifully symbolize the journey of the sun throughout the year, from its weak, low arc in winter to its powerful, high path in summer and back again. The solstice beam itself traces a path that could be seen as unwinding the darkness of the chamber. Furthermore, the spiral is a powerful metaphor for the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Just as the line of the spiral disappears into the center only to emerge again, so too might the human spirit travel into the tomb, the realm of death, only to be reborn, just as the sun is reborn at the winter solstice. This connects directly to the tomb's primary function. Some researchers even propose that these spirals were not just symbols, but were intended as functional portals, gateways through which the spirits of the dead could travel to the afterlife, or through which divine energy could enter our world. The most famous triple spiral inside the chamber, illuminated by the solstice sun, could be the ultimate representation of this, a cosmic engine at the heart of the mound, activated by light to facilitate a spiritual transition. The other symbols weave their own essential threads into this cosmological tapestry. The lozenge or diamond shape is often interpreted as a symbol of fertility and the generative power of the earth. Its repeating, linked pattern can resemble a field ready for planting or a stylized representation of a net, perhaps meant to capture spiritual energy or signify interconnectedness. The zigzag or chevron is dynamic and full of energy. It could represent flowing water linking the tomb to the life-giving river Boyne, or perhaps it depicts lightning, a powerful force from the sky. It might also symbolize a difficult or serpentine path, the challenging journey the soul must undertake after death. The concentric circles are perhaps the most universal symbol, echoing phenomena seen throughout nature, from the ripples in a pond to the rings of a tree trunk to the sun and moon in the sky. They can represent a target, a point of supreme importance, or a portal, much like the spiral. When you see a series of concentric circles carved around a cup mark drilled into the stone, it creates a powerful focal point, as if marking a specific location as a conduit between worlds. Ultimately, the art of Newgrange cannot be separated from its architecture or its astronomical function. They are all part of a single, unified design. The symbols are the spiritual and intellectual blueprint made visible. They transform the entire structure from a simple tomb into a complex cosmological model. The journey into the mound, past the carved guardian stones and into the dark chamber, was a symbolic voyage into another realm, guided by the maps and instructions etched into the very walls. The art defined the space as sacred, encoding the community's most profound beliefs about the universe and their place within it. It was a permanent, stone-bound ideology, ensuring that their understanding of the cycles of the cosmos, the journey of the soul, and the sacredness of the landscape would endure long after their voices had fallen silent. This was not mere decoration. It was the soul of Newgrange, written in a language of stone and spiral, waiting through the millennia for us to begin to understand its whispers. Long after its original builders had faded into the mists of time, and long before Professor O'Kelly's excavation revealed its true nature, Newgrange continued to capture the human imagination. For centuries, it stood not as an archaeological site, but as a place of magic and mystery, deeply woven into the rich tapestry of Irish folklore. The local people knew it not as Newgrange, but as a sidhe, a fairy mound, a portal to the other world. This ancient structure was so deeply embedded in the landscape of myth that it earned a prominent place in Ireland's mythological cycle, the collection of stories that recounts the deeds of the godlike beings who were said to have inhabited the island long before the arrival of humans. In these tales, the Great Mound is called Sid in Broga, the mansion on the Boyne, and it was considered one of the principal homes of the Tuatha De Danann. The Tuatha De Danann, whose name means the people of the goddess Danu, were a race of supernatural beings, masters of magic and art, who eventually came to be known as the fairy folk of later Irish tradition. After they were defeated by the mortal Milesians, the story goes that they did not die. Instead, they used their powerful magic to retreat from the surface world, slipping into the hollow hills and burial mounds that dotted the Irish landscape. These mounds became their shimmering, eternal palaces, and Newgrange was one of their most magnificent courts. This mythological explanation for the ancient mounds is a beautiful example of how later cultures made sense of these inexplicable structures that their own ancestors had not built. They were not just old graves, they were the glamorous, hidden homes of a powerful, magical race that lived just beyond the veil of our own reality. The most enchanting and complete myth associated with the Brug is the story of its most famous resident, Ingus Og. Ingus, whose name means true vigor, was the god of love, youth, and poetic inspiration, a figure of beautiful and clever trickery. He was the son of the Dagda, the good god, who was the chieftain of the Tuatha De Danann and a deity of immense power and knowledge. For a time, the Dagda was the master of the Brug, and he decided to parcel out the various fairy mounds among his people. He gave the magnificent Sid in Broga to his son, Ingus, but there was a catch. He only granted it for a single day and a single night. Ingus, young and clever, saw the flaw in this arrangement and quietly accepted the gift. He said nothing as the Dagda distributed the other Shia. Time passed, and eventually the Dagda came to reclaim his magnificent mansion on the Boyne. But Ingus, with the clever logic of a poet, refused to leave. He calmly explained to his father that their agreement had been for a day and a night. In the Celtic worldview, and indeed in the worldview of many ancient peoples, the concept of time was not a collection of separate, distinct units, but a continuous cycle. A day and a night, Ingus argued, were the fundamental components that made up all of existence. Every single day is composed of a day and a night, and every single night is part of that same unending cycle. Therefore, he reasoned, a day and a night was not a limited period but a description of eternity itself. The Dagda, bound by his own words and perhaps impressed by his son's brilliant wit, had to concede. Ingus Og had tricked his father out of his own home, securing the Brug for himself for all time. This myth is far more than a simple folktale about a clever trickster. It resonates with the very same themes of cyclical time and eternal renewal that are physically encoded into the monument through the Solstice alignment. Ingus, the god of youth and love, whose domain is the ever-renewing energy of life itself, becomes the eternal lord of a structure built around the annual rebirth of the sun. The idea that he gained possession through a clever play on the nature of day and night directly mirrors the Neolithic builders' obsession with the solar cycle. The story also establishes the Brug as a place outside of normal time, a timeless realm where a youthful god can reign forever, untouched by the decay and change of the mortal world. This perfectly reflects the experience of standing inside Newgrange, a place that feels both ancient and utterly outside of time, a sealed chamber where the same event has repeated for millennia without alteration. The mythological narrative adds a profound layer of cultural continuity to the site. For thousands of years across different peoples and belief systems, Newgrange was recognized as a place of immense power. The Neolithic farmers saw it as a sacred tomb and cosmic engine. Their Celtic descendants arriving millennia later saw it as the home of their gods. Both interpretations, though separated by vast stretches of time, recognized the mound as a point of contact between this world and another, more powerful realm. The later folklore doesn't erase the original purpose of Newgrange. Instead, it enriches it, showing how a place of such profound presence will inevitably generate stories to explain its mystery. The legend of Ingus Og is the poetic soul of Newgrange, a narrative spell cast over the stones that captures the same eternal, cyclical magic that the Solstice beam reveals in a shaft of golden light. This grand structure, wrapped in layers of astronomical precision and artistic symbolism, leaves us with one of its most enduring questions: what was its true purpose? Was Newgrange a tomb, a temple, or an observatory? The debate is as old as its modern rediscovery, and the evidence points compellingly in all three directions. The most straightforward answer lies in the physical remains discovered within its chambers. During excavations, the cremated bones of at least 5 individuals were found, carefully placed inside the stone basins that sit in the side recesses. These were not casual burials, they were deliberate, respectful interments, indicating that this was without question a passage tomb, a final resting place for the honored dead. In a society that likely revered its ancestors, housing their remains in such a magnificent, permanent structure would have been a way to permanently connect the living community with the spirits of those who came before, turning the entire mound into a powerful ancestral shrine. Yet, to label Newgrange as merely a tomb feels reductive, like calling Westminster Abbey just a cemetery. The sheer architectural effort, the intricate art, and the spectacular Solstice event point toward a function that was overwhelmingly spiritual and ceremonial. This was a temple, a place of powerful ritual designed to bridge worlds. Imagine the community gathered outside on the cold, dark morning of the solstice. The air would be thick with anticipation and anxiety, as the appointed spiritual leaders emerged from the darkness to announce that the sun had once again entered the chamber. It would have been a moment of collective catharsis and reaffirmed faith. The journey of the sunbeam was not just a light show, it was a divine drama. It represented the rebirth of the sun deity, its symbolic union with the Earth Mother embodied by the mound, and a blessed reassurance from the ancestors that the cycle of life would continue. This annual ritual transformed the tomb into a cosmic engine, a place where the community could actively participate in sustaining the very order of the universe, connecting the living, the dead, and the divine in a single, breathtaking moment. Then there is the undeniable precision of its alignment, which makes a powerful case for Newgrange as a sophisticated astronomical observatory. This was a society whose survival depended on the seasons. Knowing the exact moment the sun began its return was pragmatically vital for planning the agricultural year. The roof box and passage functioned with the accuracy of a modern scientific instrument, a giant stone calendar that announced the winter solstice with unerring reliability. The knowledge required to build it, years of solar observation and an understanding of solar declination, was a form of hard science for its time. The structure itself is a passive observatory, It performs its function automatically, requiring no human interpreter to mark the pivotal date. This positions the builders not just as mystics, but as the first astronomers, mastering celestial mechanics to create a permanent, predictable marker of time. So, which was it? The most satisfying conclusion is that it was all three, seamlessly integrated into a single, holistic worldview. For the Neolithic people of the Boyne Valley, there was likely no separation between science, spirituality, and society. The cyclical time tracked by the observatory was the same sacred time celebrated in the temple rituals, and both were intimately connected to the ancestral remains housed within the tomb. The knowledge of the solar cycle, held by a priestly elite, granted them immense social and political power, legitimizing their authority. The tomb provided a tangible connection to the ancestors, whose spirits were believed to influence the fertility of the land. The temple rituals, centered on the solstice, emotionally bonded the community and reinforced their shared cosmology. Newgrange was the ultimate expression of this interconnected reality. It was a practical calendar for farmers, a profound cathedral for priests, and an eternal home for ancestors. It was the beating heart of their world, a multifunctional center where the practical, the spiritual, and the cosmic converged, proving that 5,000 years ago, humanity understood that life, death, and the heavens were all part of one unbreakable, magnificent whole. But beneath the visual spectacle of the solstice sunbeam lies another, more hidden layer of the Newgrange experience, one that resonates not in light but in sound. Step inside the chamber on any day of the year, away from the crowds, and try an experiment. Speak in a normal tone or simply clap your hands once. You will be met with a remarkable acoustic phenomenon. The sound doesn't just fade, it seems to hang in the air, creating a short, sharp echo and a distinct resonance that fills the confined, stone-walled space. This is not an accident of construction. The hard, smooth surfaces of the orthostats and the corbelled roof, combined with the chamber's cruciform shape, create a natural sound box. In the field of archaeology, this is known as archaeoacoustics, the study of sound in archaeological contexts, and it strongly suggests that the builders of Newgrange were not just masters of visual and astronomical engineering, but of auditory design as well. The acoustic properties of this space would have profoundly amplified any ritual activity that took place within it. The deep, rhythmic beat of a hide-covered drum would have been transformed into a powerful, heartbeat-like pulse that vibrated through the stone and the bodies of those present. Chanting or singing, even by just a few voices, would have been magnified, creating an immersive, otherworldly choir effect that would have felt less like human-produced sound and more like the voice of the mound itself. This auditory dimension adds a crucial piece to the puzzle of Newgrange's purpose, suggesting that rituals here were designed to be a full-body, overwhelming sensory experience. This focus on sound is part of a broader, more empathetic approach to understanding the past known as sensory archaeology. For a long time, archaeology focused primarily on what could be seen and measured, the artifacts, the structures, the stratigraphy. But sensory archaeology asks us to go further, to attempt to reconstruct the complete experiential world of ancient people. It encourages us to think not just about what they saw, but what they heard, what they smelled, what they felt on their skin, and even what the air tasted like. By engaging with a site through all the senses, we move closer to understanding the emotional and psychological impact it was designed to have. At Newgrange, this approach is transformative. It pushes us beyond the cold facts of engineering and alignment and into the realm of lived, felt experience. We start to see the monument not as a static museum piece, but as a dynamic ritual machine, carefully crafted to manipulate human perception and emotion to achieve a specific spiritual state. So let's use this sensory lens to fully immerse ourselves in that pivotal solstice dawn, to imagine the complete experience as it might have been for a Neolithic participant. The journey begins outside in the bitter cold and deep darkness of a late December morning. Your breath fogs in the air, and the only sounds are the whisper of the wind across the Boyne Valley and the nervous murmurs of the gathered community. You are among the chosen few permitted to enter the Great Mound. As you pass the immense spiraled entrance stone, you leave the world of the living behind and step into the narrow, rising passage. The temperature drops noticeably, and the smell is immediate and profound. A cool, damp mineral scent of ancient earth and stone, a smell of immense age and deep silence. The darkness is not merely an absence of light, it is a palpable presence, thick and absolute, pressing in on you from all sides. You are guided by touch, your hands brushing against the cold, carved surfaces of the passage stones as you move deeper into the heart of the mound. Upon reaching the central chamber, the space opens up, but the darkness remains total. The air is utterly still. In this profound sensory deprivation, your hearing becomes hypersensitive. The shuffling of feet on the stone floor echoes faintly. Then the ritual begins. A single, deep voice intones a chant, and the acoustics of the chamber instantly take over. The sound wraps around you, seeming to come from every direction at once, disorienting and awe-inspiring. A drum begins to beat, and each strike resonates through the stone, the vibration traveling up through the soles of your feet. This sonic environment is not merely background noise, it is a tool. The repetitive, resonant sounds amplified by the chamber are known to can induce altered states of consciousness, to quiet the rational mind and open up a more intuitive spiritual awareness. The combination of darkness, rhythmic sound, and the shared anticipation of the community creates a powerful collective trance, a unified psychological state ripe for a miracle. And then the miracle arrives. The first sliver of light piercing the darkness is a shock to the visual system, a brilliant, impossible gold in the void. As the beam lengthens and brightens, it illuminates the swirling spirals on the back stone, bringing the sacred symbols to life in a dramatic, moving display. Now the experience becomes an overwhelming symphony of the senses. The sight of the golden light crawling across the floor is paired with the continuing, resonant chant and drumbeat, the sounds now visually anchored to the sacred symbols being illuminated. The cold air begins to feel a little warmer as the light fills the space. The smell of earth and stone is still there, but it now feels charged with energy, as if the sunbeam itself has a scent. For those 17 minutes, every sense is fully engaged and perfectly orchestrated: sight, sound, smell, and touch, all working in concert to create a moment of supreme spiritual intensity. This was not a passive observation. It was a carefully staged, multi-sensory ritual designed to produce a profound psychological and emotional response, to make the abstract concept of the sun's rebirth a tangible, unforgettable reality for everyone present. The architects of Newgrange understood something that we are only now rediscovering. That true power lies not in engaging a single sense, but in orchestrating a complete sensory experience that can transport the human spirit to another realm entirely. While Newgrange rightfully captures our imagination with its precise solstice alignment, it was never intended to stand alone. It is the brightest star in a dense celestial constellation, the centerpiece of the Brú-na-Bóinne complex, a place where two other massive passage tombs, Noth and Douth, complete a grand Neolithic astronomical trilogy. To focus only on Newgrange is to see a single tree and miss the sacred forest. The true genius of the Boyne Valley lies in the interplay between these three great mounds, which together form a coordinated landscape calendar designed to track the sun's entire yearly journey. This reveals a society thinking not in terms of a single event, but in a complete, sophisticated cosmology mapped directly onto the Earth. Just a stone's throw from Newgrange lies Noth, a site that in many ways is even more archaeologically rich and astronomically complex. Noth is actually composed of one large central mound, surrounded by no fewer than 18 smaller satellite tombs, creating a ceremonial precinct of staggering scale. The central mound itself is a marvel, but its true astronomical distinction lies in its unique double act. Unlike Newgrange's single, solstice-oriented passage, Noth boasts two separate, opposing passage tombs built back-to-back within the same great mound. One passage faces due east and the other faces due west. For decades, archaeologists theorized about their purpose, and the prevailing belief today is that these passages were precisely aligned to capture the rays of the rising sun on the spring equinox and the setting sun on the autumn equinox. Imagine the significance of this design. While Newgrange marked the pivotal turning point of deep winter, Noth was designed to herald the 2 days of perfect balance, the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length all across the planet. This transforms the complex from a monument marking a single moment into a sophisticated system, marking the key transitional phases of the solar year. The builders were not just tracking the sun's extremes, they were charting its entire rhythm, dividing the year into its fundamental seasons of rebirth, growth, harvest, and rest, with each phase having its own dedicated architectural marker. The artistic legacy at Noth is nothing short of breathtaking. This single site contains an estimated 1/3 of all known megalithic art in the entirety of Western Europe. Its curbstones are a sprawling gallery of Neolithic symbolism, covered in an incredible variety of spirals, lozenges, zigzags, and serpentiform designs. One of the most famous stones, known as the entrance stone to the Eastern Passage, is a riot of carved energy, its surface a dense tapestry of arcs and circles that seems to burst with life. The sheer quantity of art suggests that Noth may have served as a primary center for spiritual and ceremonial life, perhaps even the main residence of the astronomer priests who oversaw the celestial observations for the entire region. The presence of the 2 equinoctial passages positions Noth as the guardian of the balance, the place that marked the sun's crossings of the celestial equator, events that would have held immense significance for a society deeply attuned to the harmony of the natural world. Completing the Great Triad is Douth, the 3rd major mound of the Brú-na-Bóinne complex. While less excavated and more damaged by time and later interference than its siblings, Douth is no less important in the cosmological picture. Its name in Irish Dubhad means darkness, a fitting title for a mound that shares a solstitial connection with Newgrange, but with a fascinating twist. Douth also contains a long passage tomb, and archaeological investigation suggests it is aligned with the setting sun during the winter solstice. As the sun disappeared below the horizon on the shortest day of the year, its last rays would have reached into the heart of Douth. Think about the powerful symmetry this creates across the landscape. On the same day, the community would have witnessed the sun's rebirth at Newgrange at dawn, and then later, its symbolic death and descent into the underworld at Douth at dusk. The entire solstice day was thus framed by these 2 great monuments, one capturing the hope of the new sun's light, and the other marking the departure of the old, weak sun into darkness. This transforms a single astronomical event into a day-long ritual narrative, a story of death and rebirth played out across the very hills of the Boyne Valley, with the community as active participants in the cosmic drama. When you step back and view Brú-na-Bóinne as a single, integrated unit, a breathtaking pattern emerges. This was not a random collection of impressive tombs. It was a carefully planned sacred geography, a vast, open-air temple complex designed to mirror the heavens on earth. Newgrange, Noth, and Douth were not rivals, they were collaborators in a grand cosmological plan. Each mound had a specific complementary role in tracking the sun's cycle, Douth for the winter solstice sunset, Newgrange for the winter solstice sunrise, and Noth for the equinoxes. This coordinated system provided a complete, permanent, and incredibly accurate calendar for the entire society, marking the times for planting, harvesting, and their most important religious festivals. The entire river bend becomes a colossal stone clock, with the sun acting as the moving hand across its dial. This level of landscape-wide coordination implies a society with a unified spiritual vision and a central authority powerful enough to plan and execute projects over centuries. The minds behind Brú na Bóinne were master architects of both stone and symbolism. They looked at a bend in a river and saw a canvas for their cosmology. They understood the cyclical journey of the sun and engineered the very land to celebrate it, to make it tangible and predictable. This complex stands as one of the earliest and most profound examples of humanity's desire to find order in the cosmos and to build a permanent home for that order here on Earth. It represents a leap from simply observing the sky to actively creating a landscape that dialogues with it, a place where every sunrise and sunset on the most important days of the year was acknowledged and celebrated by the silent, waiting stones. The true message of the Boyne Valley is not just in the light that enters one chamber, but in the collective voice of three great mounds singing in harmony with the turning of the year. Standing back and looking at the completed mound, it's almost impossible to fathom the sheer scale of human effort that went into its creation. We're talking about a project that required moving and placing an estimated 200,000 tons of stone and earth. To put that into terms we can visualize, that's the weight of hundreds of fully loaded jumbo jets, all lifted, carried, and positioned by human hands without the aid of machinery or even wheeled carts. This wasn't a task for a single season or even a single generation. This was a multi-generational undertaking that demanded a highly organized society with a clear, unified vision that could be passed down from parents to children over decades. The very existence of Newgrange is a powerful testament to a social structure capable of sustained, coordinated effort on a truly heroic scale. The sourcing of materials alone was a logistical nightmare solved with remarkable ingenuity. The structure we see today is a clever patchwork of geology, with each type of stone deliberately chosen and brought from specific, distant locations. The most visually striking material is the brilliant white quartz that makes up the famous facade. This wasn't found lying around the Boyne Valley. It was quarried from the Wicklow Mountains over 70 kilometers or about 43 miles to the south. Just imagine the determination required to identify that specific stone in those distant hills, quarry it in sufficient quantities, and then transport it on that immense journey north. Mixed with this white quartz are thousands of dark, rounded granitic cobbles. These were gathered from the beaches along the Irish seacoast, another long and difficult journey away. Then there are the massive structural stones, the gigantic curbstones that encircle the base, some weighing over 5 tons, and the huge slabs that form the passage and chamber, were likely sourced a little closer, from riverbeds in the local area where the water had naturally shaped and exposed such monoliths. This was not a case of using whatever was nearby. This was a deliberate, symbolic act of bringing the entire region, the mountains, the coast, the rivers, to this one sacred site, physically uniting their world in a single grand monument. So how did they move these colossal weights across such vast distances? Without the wheel or draft animals, their methods were a masterpiece of simple physics and raw human power. For the largest curbstones and orthostats, the most likely method involved a combination of log rollers, sledges, and ropes made from animal hide or plant fibers. A team of workers would have first levered a stone onto a wooden sledge. Then, using ropes, a large group would pull the sledge forward, while another team constantly repositioned log rollers from the back to the front, creating a continuous rolling pathway. The transport of the quartz and cobbles while dealing with smaller individual pieces was a problem of volume. These were likely carried in baskets or hide bags, perhaps loaded onto wooden frames that could be dragged or even floated on rafts along the River Boyne for part of the journey. Every single stone, from the smallest cobble to the 20-ton capstones, represents countless hours of coordinated, back-breaking labor. The sound of the construction site must have been a constant symphony of grinding stone, creaking wood, shouted commands, and the rhythmic chanting of teams pulling in unison. This brings us to the human engine behind this endeavor. The workforce was undoubtedly vast, likely drawn from communities across a wide region. We're not talking about a small village pitching in. This was a project that would have required the mobilization of hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people at a time. The social organization needed to feed, house, and direct this many workers is staggering to contemplate. There must have been a sophisticated hierarchy in place: master architects who designed the alignment and the corbelled roof, foremen who coordinated the different work gangs, skilled artisans who carved the intricate symbols, and the immense number of general laborers who provided the muscle. This level of specialization indicates a society that was far from egalitarian. It points to a clear social structure with a ruling elite or a priestly class who possessed the authority to command such a monumental effort. Yet, it's also possible that participation was seen as a religious duty or a great honor, a way for families to connect themselves to a project of eternal significance, ensuring their community's place in the cosmic order for all time. Ultimately, the construction of Newgrange was an act of faith made physical. The generations of workers who hauled these stones never saw the final, completed product. They worked on a promise, on a vision passed down from their elders, trusting that their children and their children's children would see it through. This long-term perspective is perhaps the most humbling aspect of all. It reveals a society that was thinking in terms of centuries, not seasons. They were not building for themselves, but for their ancestors and for their descendants, creating a permanent fixture in the landscape that would outlive languages, empires, and the very memory of their names. The logistical triumph of Newgrange is not just in the movement of stone, but in the transmission of a unified vision across the generations, a shared dream so powerful it could move mountains piece by painstaking piece. While the winter solstice sun is the undeniable star of the show at Newgrange, its celestial story may have more characters in its cast than we first realized. The precision of the solar alignment is so perfect that it naturally leads to a compelling question. Were the builders also tracking the more subtle, complex dance of the moon and the distant, fixed stars? The possibility of lunar alignments at Newgrange opens up a whole new dimension of Neolithic astronomy, one that requires an even more patient and long-term observation of the heavens. Unlike the sun, which follows a relatively simple annual path between two solstice points, the moon's behavior is far more intricate. Its rising and setting points swing north and south along the horizon over a much longer, more complicated cycle that takes approximately 18.6 years to complete. The extremes of this cycle are known as the major lunar standstill, a time when the moon reaches its farthest possible points north and south, positions it only touches once every generation. This extended lunar cycle makes the potential for a deliberate alignment at Newgrange both more speculative and more profound. Some researchers have pointed to features of the site that might support this theory. For instance, the large curbstone numbered 52, located directly opposite the main entrance on the western side of the mound, has been studied for a potential connection to the setting moon at the major southern standstill. If this were intentional, it would mean the monument was designed not just for a yearly solar event, but for a generational lunar one. The implications of this are staggering. Tracking the moon's 18.6-year cycle requires observations that span multiple human lifetimes. It suggests a society capable of preserving and transmitting incredibly precise, long-term astronomical data through an unbroken oral tradition. A lunar alignment would transform Newgrange from a magnificent annual calendar into a multi-generational clock, a place where the community could witness a celestial event that their grandparents may have last seen, reinforcing the idea that they were part of a timeless, enduring cosmic order that stretched far beyond a single human life. Beyond our immediate sun and moon, the vast canopy of fixed stars may also have been part of the Neolithic Sky Watcher's map. One of the most tantalizing stellar theories connects Newgrange to the Pleiades star cluster. To the naked eye, the Pleiades appears as a tiny, misty dipper or a tight knot of faint stars in the constellation Taurus. For countless ancient cultures around the world, from the Greeks to the indigenous peoples of North America, this cluster held immense significance, often associated with agriculture, death, rebirth, and the changing seasons. Its heliacal rising, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of being invisibly close to the sun, often coincided with important agricultural dates like the beginning of the harvest or the planting season. Could the builders of Newgrange have been tracking this celestial marker? While there is no single, undeniable architectural feature like the roof box pointing directly at a star, the symbolic art may hold clues. Some researchers have proposed that certain intricate patterns of cup and ring marks and clusters of small, circular depressions found on stones at Newgrange and other nearby sites could be schematic representations of star patterns, with the Pleiades being a prime candidate. The cluster's compact, distinctive shape would make it a recognizable reference point in the night sky. If this connection is valid, it would mean the monument's purpose was layered, tracking not just the sun for the solstice, but also key stars that help to further refine their calendar and inform their agricultural and ritual practices. This would paint a picture of a truly holistic astronomy where the entire cosmos, the sun, the moon, and the stars, was seen as an interconnected system, and their great mound was the central instrument for interpreting its messages. It is crucial, however, to approach these theories of lunar and stellar alignments with a healthy balance of open-mindedness and scientific caution. Unlike the solar alignment, which can be witnessed and verified every single year in a dramatic and unambiguous display, evidence for other alignments is often more circumstantial and open to interpretation. The long time frame of the lunar cycle makes it difficult to test and confirm. The connection to specific stars is even more challenging to prove, as the slow precession of the Earth's axis means the position of the stars in the sky 5,000 years ago was noticeably different from where they are today. What we must avoid is the temptation to see alignments everywhere, a pitfall sometimes called astronomical overinterpretation. The unique brilliance of Newgrange's solar alignment is so powerful that it can make us want to find similar complexity in every stone and sightline. Yet, even with these cautions, the very act of exploring these possibilities enriches our understanding of the Neolithic mind. Whether or not every single theory holds up to rigorous scrutiny, the collective evidence suggests a culture that was deeply and actively engaged with the night sky. Their world was not limited to the daylight hours. They lived under a canopy of stars and a wandering moon, and they sought to find meaning and order in all of it. The Great Mound, therefore, can be seen not as a single-purpose instrument, but as a multi-faceted cosmic repository. It was primarily a solar temple, yes, but it may also have served as a lunar observatory for generational rituals and a permanent stone canvas where the patterns of the stars were recorded for posterity. This broader celestial vision reveals a society of unparalleled astronomical sophistication, whose intellectual ambition reached far beyond the horizon, seeking to weave every strand of the cosmos into the very fabric of their most sacred place. When Professor O'Kelly and his team began their work in the 1960s, they were faced with a monumental dilemma. The Great Mound was unstable. Centuries of slippage and soil erosion had left the original structure in a precarious state, and a crucial decision had to be made. Should they simply excavate and document, leaving the ruins as they were found, or should they actively restore the monument to what they believed was its original majestic appearance? O'Kelly chose the path of restoration, a decision that would forever change the face of Newgrange and ignite a debate that continues to simmer in archaeological circles to this very day. The most visible and controversial aspect of this work was the reconstruction of the famous white quartz facade. During the excavation, the team discovered a vast amount of white quartz stones and dark granite cobbles that had collapsed into a great, sloping heap around the entire entrance of the mound. O'Kelly interpreted this as the fallen remains of a magnificent, gleaming wall that had once encircled the front of the structure. He envisioned Newgrange as it might have been in its prime, a brilliant white pyramid of sparkling stone, visible for miles across the Boyne Valley, a dazzling sight under the sun. To realize this vision, his team carefully gathered the original quartz and granite and used it to construct the vertical, near vertical in some places, retaining wall that we see today. They also refaced the entire mound with a layer of turf and grass, sculpting it back into the smooth, iconic dome that defines its modern silhouette. The arguments in favor of this ambitious restoration are powerful and rooted in a desire to both preserve and communicate. From a purely structural perspective, the new quartz wall and the recontoured mound provided essential stability, preventing further erosion and collapse of the 5,000-year-old earthwork. It transformed a crumbling, overgrown hill into a secure, permanent monument. But beyond mere engineering, O'Kelly and his supporters believed they were giving the public a gift. They were rescuing Newgrange from being an abstract, academic ruin, a site only archaeologists could truly appreciate, and returning it to a state of grandeur that the average visitor could understand and marvel at. This reconstructed facade allowed people to feel the awe that the Neolithic builders intended, to look upon the Great White Wall and grasp the sheer ambition and sophistication of its creators. It made the past feel immediate and tangible, bridging a gap of 50 centuries and inspiring a sense of wonder that a pile of collapsed stones simply could not. In this view, the restoration was an act of public education and cultural revival, a necessary step to make one of the world's greatest prehistoric monuments accessible and emotionally resonant for modern audiences. However, this well-intentioned vision soon faced a wave of criticism from within the archaeological community, criticisms that have only grown more nuanced with time. The central objection revolves around the concept of speculation. Critics argue that while the collapsed stones were certainly there, their original configuration was anything but certain. The evidence for a tall, vertical, freestanding wall is, they contend, far from conclusive. An alternative, and many believe more likely, interpretation is that the white quartz and granite formed a more subtle, sloping revetment, a gently inclined pavement that spread out from the base of the mound like a shimmering apron of stone. This would have created a very different visual effect, not a towering white cliff but a radiant, sun-catching skirt that merged gracefully with the landscape. By choosing the more dramatic vertical wall interpretation, O'Kelly may have permanently altered the physical form and, consequently, our entire perception of the monument's original aesthetic and symbolic meaning. The Newgrange we visit today, with its striking, almost fortress-like facade, is therefore a modern hypothesis built in stone, a best guess that has now become an immutable fact in the public imagination. This, the critics say, crosses a dangerous ethical line in conservation, where an informed reconstruction risks replacing the authentic, if incomplete, ancient reality. This controversy touches upon the very heart of modern archaeological ethics. The fundamental principle of minimal intervention suggests that conservators should do only what is necessary to stabilize a site, avoiding speculative reconstructions that cannot be definitively proven. The alternative approach, sometimes called anastylosis, involves reassembling existing but disassembled parts, a practice more common with classical ruins where the original positions of columns and lintels are clearly known. At Newgrange, the restoration went beyond mere reassembly. It involved interpreting a puzzle with many missing pieces. The debate forces us to ask difficult questions. Is it better to present a partially reconstructed, visually impressive monument that inspires the public, even if some of it is a modern creation? Or is it more honest to preserve the site as a ruin, acknowledging the gaps in our knowledge and allowing visitors to use their own imagination to fill in the blanks? There is no easy answer. the restored Newgrange has become a powerful national symbol for Ireland and a profound spiritual touchstone for hundreds of thousands of visitors, an experience made possible by O'Kelly's vision. Yet, every time a tourist photographs that brilliant white wall, they are capturing a 20th century interpretation as much as a Neolithic one. This ongoing debate at Newgrange serves as a crucial case study for all ancient sites, a permanent reminder of the delicate balance we must strike between preserving the physical past and interpreting its meaning for the present, a conversation where the very stones themselves seem to hold conflicting opinions. This elegant alignment in the Boyne Valley, however, was not an isolated spark of genius in a dark and uncomprehending world. If we pull our perspective back to a global scale, we see something remarkable. Around the same time, and for millennia afterwards, cultures across the planet were independently looking up at the same sky and feeling the same powerful urge to build their understanding into the earth. Newgrange is a brilliant star in a vast constellation of ancient observatories, and by comparing it to a few of its global cousins, we can better appreciate both the universality of this human drive and what makes the Irish monument so uniquely special. A compelling parallel lies far to the north in the windswept Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland. Here stands Micho, another massive, grass-covered chambered tomb that bears a striking resemblance to Newgrange. Built around 500 years after its Irish counterpart, Micho also features a long, narrow passageway leading to a central chamber with side recesses. And just like Newgrange, this passage is precisely aligned with a celestial event. For a few weeks around the winter solstice, the setting sun sinks below the horizon, and its last rays are channeled down Micho's passage, striking the back wall of the chamber with a dramatic, warming light. The similarity is uncanny, suggesting a shared cultural or knowledge exchange network across the seaways of Neolithic Britain and Ireland. Yet there is a key difference. The alignment at Newgrange is captured by a sophisticated roof box, a deliberate and complex architectural filter for the light. Micho's alignment, while precise, uses the main entrance itself. This distinction highlights the particular mechanical ingenuity of the Newgrange builders, their desire not just to capture light, but to engineer its entry in a very specific and elevated way. Traveling across the Atlantic to the American Southwest, we find a completely different expression of the same celestial fascination. At Choco Canyon in New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloan people created the sun dagger on Fajada but around 1,000 years ago. Here, the approach was not massive earth-moving, but a delicate interaction of light and shadow. They positioned two massive, leaning stone slabs so that on the summer solstice, a dagger-shaped beam of sunlight would slice directly through the center of a spiral petroglyph carved on a rock face behind them. On the winter solstice, two daggers of light would perfectly bracket the same spiral. This is astronomy of an entirely different character, a petroglyphic calendar that required a human observer to be present at a specific place and time to read the signal. It is active and interpretive, whereas Newgrange is passive and declarative. The monument in Ireland performs its function automatically, a machine that confirms the solstice whether anyone is inside or not. This contrast showcases two divergent solutions to the same problem. One is an intricate, light-based code etched into a cliff face, and the other is a colossal, self-operating timepiece built into a hillside. Then, of course, there is Stonehenge, the world's most famous megalithic monument. The comparison is inevitable, yet it reveals more through contrast than through similarity. While the earliest earthworks at Stonehenge are only slightly younger than Newgrange, the iconic stone circle we recognize today was erected over 1,000 years later. Its development was a long, complex process of construction, deconstruction, and rearrangement over many centuries. Its alignments are multiple and complex, encompassing the summer solstice sunrise, the winter solstice sunset, and likely lunar standstills as well. Stonehenge is a multifaceted astronomical and ceremonial complex, a sprawling puzzle of interlocking sightlines. Newgrange, by comparison, is a masterpiece of singular focus. It was largely built in one grand, cohesive phase, and its entire monumental form is dedicated to one event, the winter solstice sunrise. There is a powerful elegance in this simplicity. Where Stonehenge is a sprawling symphony of stone with many movements, Newgrange is a perfectly composed solo, one profound note held with unwavering clarity across 50 centuries. What these global comparisons ultimately reveal is a profound and universal human impulse. From the deserts of New Mexico to the islands of Orkney and the plains of Salisbury, our ancestors felt a deep need to connect their lives on Earth to the grand cycles of the cosmos. They were driven by a mixture of practical necessity, the need for calendars to manage their food supply, and a spiritual yearning to find order, meaning, and reassurance in the heavens. The repetitive, predictable motions of the sun and moon offered a framework of stability in an otherwise unpredictable world. Building monuments that mirrored these cycles was a way to root that cosmic stability in the very land they inhabited, to make the intangible rhythms of the sky a tangible part of their daily reality. It was an act of world building, of creating a sacred landscape where humanity and the heavens were in constant, structured dialogue. In this grand, global narrative, Newgrange claims its special place not through complexity, but through a combination of breathtaking antiquity and pure, undiluted purpose. It is older than almost all of its peers, a pioneer that demonstrated the heights of Neolithic achievement millennia before the classical civilizations of Greece and Rome. Its genius lies in its architectural elegance, the clever roof box, the precisely angled passage, the corbelled roof, all working in harmony to produce one of the most dramatic and emotionally powerful celestial observations in the ancient world. It isn't a site of multiple, debated alignments. Its purpose is stunningly clear. This single-minded focus gives Newgrange a unique, powerful voice in the chorus of ancient astronomy. It stands as a quiet, enduring testament to a time when humanity first learned to write its relationship with the sun in stone and earth, a relationship that began with a single, golden beam of light reaching into the heart of the winter darkness. The secrets of Newgrange, once locked away in darkness and earth, are now being revealed by beams of a different kind, not of sunlight, but of lasers and radio waves. The 21st century has ushered in a golden age of archaeological discovery at the Brú na Bóinne, not with shovels and trowels, but with non-invasive technologies that allow us to see through time itself without ever breaking the ground. These modern scientific investigations are like giving researchers a pair of X-ray glasses to look deep into the sacred landscape, building a far more nuanced and complex picture of the society that built this marvel. The era of large-scale, intrusive excavation is giving way to a sensitive, high-tech approach that respects the integrity of the 5,000-year-old monument while uncovering its hidden stories. One of the most powerful tools in this new arsenal is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine flying a plane or a drone over the Boyne Valley, equipped with a laser scanner that fires millions of invisible pulses of light toward the ground. By measuring the precise time it takes for each pulse to bounce back, a highly detailed three-dimensional map of the surface can be created. The magic of LiDAR is its ability to see through visual clutter like trees and undergrowth, digitally stripping them away to reveal the subtle contours of the earth beneath. When archaeologists applied this technology to the landscape around Newgrange, the results were breathtaking. The familiar mounds of Newgrange, Noath, and Dowth were suddenly placed in a completely new context. The LiDAR maps revealed a vast, hidden network of previously unknown monuments, dozens of smaller earthen enclosures, ceremonial structures, and what appear to be ancient pathways or processional routes crisscrossing the landscape. It showed that the three great mounds were not isolated islands of activity, but the central hubs of a sprawling, densely populated ritual complex. This was a Neolithic ceremonial landscape on a scale no one had fully appreciated, a sacred city of the dead and the divine that had been literally hiding in plain sight for centuries, waiting for the right technology to make it visible again. While LiDAR maps the surface with incredible precision, another technology peers into the ground itself. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works by sending high-frequency radio waves into the soil and analyzing the signals that bounce back. Different materials like solid stone, loose soil, or a hidden archaeological feature reflect these signals in unique ways. By dragging a GPR unit over the ground in a careful grid pattern, researchers can build a detailed subterranean picture like a medical CT scan of the Earth. At Newgrange, this technology has been used to investigate the area immediately around the mound, revealing features that would be impossible to detect from the surface. It has helped confirm the structure of the quartz and granite wall and has identified potential ritual pits and other buried structures that may hold clues to the activities that took place outside the tomb. Most excitingly, GPR surveys around Noth and Douth have hinted at the presence of countless other, smaller satellite tombs and structures buried in their immediate vicinity, suggesting an even more intense concentration of Neolithic activity than previously dreamed. These techniques confirm that for every majestic monument we see today, there are likely dozens of related features still waiting silently beneath the turf, forming a complete ritual tapestry that we are only now beginning to unravel. But what about the people themselves? The scientific revolution extends beyond the landscape to the very individuals who were laid to rest within the chamber. The cremated remains found in the stone basins during the original excavations were once thought to have little more to tell us. Today, thanks to advanced isotopic analysis, these ancient bones are speaking volumes. This process involves vaporizing a tiny, almost microscopic sample of the cremated bone and analyzing its chemical signature in a mass spectrometer. The key element is strontium, a mineral that is absorbed from the food and water we consume into our teeth and bones, locking in a geochemical signature of the landscape where we grew up. The geology of Ireland is a patchwork of different ancient rocks, each with a unique strontium isotope ratio. By comparing the strontium signature in the Newgrange bones to the baseline map of Ireland's geology, scientists can determine whether an individual spent their childhood in the local Boyne Valley area or if they came from somewhere else entirely. The results of these analyses have been paradigm-shifting. They revealed that at least one of the individuals buried in the hallowed chamber of Newgrange did not grow up anywhere near the site. Their strontium signature points to an origin in the northwest of Ireland, possibly in modern-day County Donegal or even across the sea in Scotland. This single scientific fact dramatically changes our understanding of the tomb's significance. It suggests that Newgrange was not just a local cemetery for a chieftain's family. It was a site of such renown, such powerful spiritual pull, that people were bringing their honored dead on long, arduous journeys from distant territories to be laid to rest within its walls. This turns Newgrange from a regional center into a national, or even international place of pilgrimage in the Neolithic world. It implies a shared cultural and religious identity across a wide swath of prehistoric Ireland, united by the awe-inspiring power of this cosmic tomb. Further analysis of the bones can also reveal details about diet. While the individuals were cremated, which destroys much of the collagen used for standard carbon and nitrogen dietary analysis, scientists can still glean clues. The very fact that they were selected for burial in such an illustrious monument suggests they were of high status, likely enjoying a diet richer in protein from meat and dairy than the average person. This fits with the image of a stratified society with a privileged elite who held the knowledge and authority to commission the construction of Newgrange. The combination of isotopic and dietary studies is building intimate biographies of the dead, telling us not just who they were in death, but where they came from and how they lived, adding a profoundly human dimension to the stone and spiral grandeur of the monument. These non-invasive techniques represent a fundamental philosophical shift in archaeology, moving from a focus on extraction to a priority on preservation. In the past, the only way to learn about a site was to dig it up, a process that is inherently destructive and irreversible. Once a layer of soil is removed, the context is gone forever. Modern methods like LIDAR and GPR allow for endless, repeatable investigation without any damage. They let the archaeology remain safely in the ground for future generations, who will undoubtedly have even more powerful technologies at their disposal. This approach is especially critical for a fragile, waterlogged, and deeply sacred landscape like Brú na Bóinne, which is also a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site. Every new survey adds another layer of data, helping to create a living, digital twin of the complex that can be studied by scholars around the world and preserved for posterity, even as the original site is protected. Together, these scientific tools are weaving a story that is far richer and more dynamic than any single excavation could ever tell. They reveal a landscape teeming with activity, a society with wide-reaching connections, and a monument that drew people from across the island. This is no longer just the story of a single, cleverly aligned tomb. It is the story of a thriving, sophisticated, and interconnected Neolithic society that transformed an entire river bend into a permanent stage for their cosmic beliefs, a stage whose full scale and complexity we are only now, 5,000 years later, finally beginning to see. Today, a visit to Newgrange is a journey that begins not at the ancient mound itself, but at the stunning, state-of-the-art Brú na Bóinne Visitor Center. Nestled on the south bank of the River Boyne, this modern facility is your gateway to the Neolithic world, a necessary first stop that grounds you in the history and significance of the landscape you are about to enter. You cannot simply drive up and walk to the Great Mound. Access is strictly controlled to protect the fragile site, and all visits are by guided tour only, departing from the center. This deliberate pacing builds a powerful sense of anticipation. Inside the center, you are immersed in immersive exhibits that set the stage, with full-scale replicas of the chamber and its stunning carvings, detailed models of the construction process, and displays of artifacts found during excavations. It is here that the sheer scale of the accomplishment begins to sink in, transforming the distant past from an abstract idea into a tangible reality. After this preparation, you board a small shuttle bus that carries you across the river and up the rolling hills, and as you crest the final rise, there it is, the great grass-covered dome, massive and silent against the Irish sky, a sight that has commanded awe for 50 centuries. Stepping off the bus and approaching the mound is a moment of profound connection. You walk on a modern path, but you are following in the footsteps of millennia. The first thing that strikes you is the scale. Photographs simply cannot prepare you for the immensity of the curbstones or the sheer bulk of the mound itself. Your guide leads you to the magnificent entrance stone, its swirling triple spiral now protected by a glass panel, and explains its significance as a guardian of this sacred space. Then comes the moment you have been waiting for, the entry into the passage. You duck your head and step single file into the narrow, stone-lined corridor, the temperature dropping instantly. The air is cool and still, carrying the damp, mineral scent of ancient earth. The journey inward is a sensory departure from the modern world. The daylight at the entrance shrinks to a distant square as you move deeper into the heart of the mound, your shoulders brushing against 5,000-year-old stones. Emerging into the central chamber is breathtaking. The corbelled roof soars overhead, and your guide uses a flashlight to point out the intricate carvings on the orthostats, the spirals, lozenges, and chevrons that have waited in the dark since the Stone Age. Standing in that silent, powerful space, you are participating in a ritual as old as civilization itself, a direct physical link to a past that feels both incredibly remote and astonishingly immediate. For a lucky handful of people each year, this profound experience is elevated to something truly transcendent through the winter solstice lottery. The chance to be inside the chamber as the sun's ray penetrates the darkness is so sought after that a public lottery is held annually, receiving tens of thousands of applications from all around the globe. The winners, along with a guest, are granted access for the few mornings around the solstice when the alignment is possible. They gather in the pre-dawn chill, a small group shivering in the darkness, and are led into the chamber to wait. What follows is not a tourist attraction, it is a vigil. For those 17 minutes as the beam of light travels slowly up the passage, the modern world falls completely away. The experience is deeply personal and often emotional, a silent, shared moment of wonder that connects the participants not just to a historical site, but to the cosmic cycle the builders so revered. The popularity of this lottery speaks to a universal human yearning, a desire to witness magic, to touch the sublime, and to be part of a story that is far larger than ourselves. It ensures that the original purpose of Newgrange is not just a relic of the past, but a living, breathing event that continues to inspire awe in the 21st century. The global and cultural significance of this place is formally recognized by its status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a designation it shares with wonders like the Pyramids of Giza and the Great Wall of China. This isn't just a tourist label, it is a statement that Newgrange and the wider Brú-na-Bóinne complex are part of the cultural heritage of all humanity, places of outstanding universal value that we are collectively responsible for protecting for future generations. This international acclaim is mirrored by the deep, personal pride the Irish people take in the monument. Newgrange is far more than an archaeological site. It is a powerful national symbol, a testament to the sophistication and ingenuity of Ireland's ancient ancestors. This pride is visibly etched into the nation's identity, quite literally, as Newgrange has been featured on Irish currency, its iconic facade and spirals gracing the former Irish pound note. It is a permanent reminder that Ireland's history is one of profound depth and artistic genius, a source of cultural confidence that stretches back to the very dawn of European civilization. This cultural resonance extends far beyond official symbols, inspiring generations of artists, writers, and poets who see in the mound a deep well of creative energy. The Nobel Prize-winning Irish poet Seamus Heaney was profoundly moved by Newgrange, writing about its corbelled, stone-roofed chamber and its function as a place of cosmic renewal. For Heaney and others, the monument is not a dead ruin but a living source of metaphor, a symbol of the relationship between darkness and light, death and rebirth, the ancient and the contemporary. It represents a foundational layer of the Irish psyche, a connection to the land and its deep, myth-saturated past. This enduring inspiration ensures that Newgrange remains a vibrant part of Ireland's cultural conversation, continually rediscovered and reimagined through new artistic lenses. Ultimately, the true power of Newgrange today is its role as a bridge, a breathtakingly sturdy connector between a remote, unimaginable past and a living, dynamic cultural heritage. It is a place where schoolchildren on a field trip, academics conducting research, and visitors from every corner of the world can all stand in the same spot and feel the same awe. It demonstrates that heritage is not something static in a museum case, but a continuous thread. The Stone Age farmers who calculated the solstice sunrise, the medieval monks who wrote down the myths of the Tuatha De Danann, the modern archaeologists who reconstructed the facade, and the lottery winner witnessing the solstice light are all part of the same unbroken story. Newgrange challenges our modern sense of time, compressing 50 centuries into a single, tangible experience and reminding us that the human questions about life, death, and our place in the cosmos are as relevant today as they were when the first quartz stone was laid in place. It is a monument that does not simply belong to history, but one that actively shapes our present, inviting each new generation to find its own meaning in the silent, waiting darkness of its chamber. However, the profound mystery of Newgrange, a structure of such advanced knowledge built in a time we so often mislabel as primitive, has inevitably given rise to a whole other realm of interpretation, one that lives just outside the boundaries of conventional archaeology. In the absence of written records from its creators, the human imagination has rushed in to fill the silence with spectacular theories that seek to explain the unexplainable. One of the most persistent of these ideas connects Newgrange to the concept of ley lines, those hypothetical alignments of ancient and sacred sites that are said to crisscross the landscape like a spiritual energy grid. Proponents of this view see Newgrange not just as an isolated tomb, but as a powerful node or energy center within this vast network. They suggest that the precise placement of the mound, along with Noth and Douth, was no accident of geography, but a deliberate choice to harness and amplify the Earth's own mystical energies. The winter solstice alignment in this interpretation becomes more than a calendar event. It is a moment when this terrestrial power is supercharged by a celestial event, opening a portal or vortex for those who know how to access it. While mainstream archaeology finds no empirical evidence for the existence of measurable energy fields along ley lines, this theory speaks to a deep, intuitive sense many people have when they visit the site, a feeling that they are standing in a place that is somehow alive, charged with a significance that transcends its physical stones. Venturing further into the realm of speculation, we encounter the captivating, if controversial, theory of ancient astronauts. From this perspective, the astronomical precision of Newgrange is simply too advanced to be the work of early farmers. How, the argument goes, could a society without sophisticated mathematics or writing possibly calculate the solar year and engineer such a perfect alignment? The answer proposed is that they had help, that knowledge was given to them by extraterrestrial visitors. In this narrative, the roof box is not just a Neolithic innovation but a piece of alien technology, and the entire monument becomes a beacon or landing site for otherworldly beings. The intricate spirals and symbols are then reinterpreted not as abstract art, but as star maps or schematic diagrams of spacecraft, left behind as a guide or a message. This theory, popularized in books and television shows, taps into a powerful human desire for a more dramatic origin story, one where our own history is intertwined with cosmic interventions. While there is not a shred of archaeological evidence to support this, and the theory often underestimates the immense capabilities of human ingenuity and long-term observation, its enduring popularity highlights just how awe-inspiring the achievements at Newgrange truly are. The very existence of these ideas is a backhanded compliment to the Neolithic mind. The builders were so successful that their work seems to some literally out of this world. Perhaps the most romantic of all the alternative histories links Newgrange to the legendary lost continent of Atlantis. First described by the Greek philosopher Plato, Atlantis was said to be an advanced civilization that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. Some speculative historians have proposed that survivors of this cataclysm dispersed across the globe, bringing their sophisticated knowledge with them to various outposts, including Ireland. In this version of events, Newgrange is not a local development but a repository of lost Atlantean wisdom, a library in stone built by refugees to preserve their cosmic science. The solstice alignment is seen as a fragment of their advanced astronomy, and the megalithic art becomes a coded language from a fallen world. This theory weaves a tantalizing tapestry, connecting disparate ancient mysteries into a single global narrative. Yet for all its appeal, it faces a significant chronological hurdle. Newgrange was built over 5,000 years ago, while Plato wrote about Atlantis just 2,400 years ago. There is a gap of 3 millennia between the construction of the monument and the first written mention of the lost continent, making a direct connection historically untenable. Still, the theory persists because it fulfills a narrative need, offering a singular, dramatic source for the flowering of human civilization. What is the mainstream archaeological response to these captivating stories? Scholars gently but firmly point back to the immense body of evidence painstakingly gathered over decades of excavation and analysis. The development of monument building in the Boyne Valley did not appear out of nowhere. It shows a clear and gradual evolution from earlier, simpler passage tombs found throughout Ireland and Atlantic Europe. The astronomical knowledge required was not a gift from the stars but the result of generations of patient, naked-eye observation of the sky, a skill demonstrated by countless indigenous cultures around the world. The engineering, while brilliant, uses principles of corbelling and weight distribution that can be traced and understood through experimental archaeology. People have successfully demonstrated how these structures could be built using Neolithic technology. The archaeological consensus paints a picture that is, in its own way, even more remarkable than the fringe theories. It reveals a society of indigenous Stone Age people who, through their own collective intelligence, social organization, and spiritual drive, achieved something extraordinary. They were not passive recipients of knowledge from outsiders. They were the active, brilliant creators of their own legacy. Ultimately, the proliferation of these alternative narratives tells us less about Newgrange itself and more about our own modern relationship with the deep past. A site of such staggering antiquity and mystery creates a vacuum of meaning, and human nature abhors such a vacuum. We are storytelling creatures, and when faced with a puzzle of this magnitude, we are compelled to supply an answer. The official archaeological explanation, with its careful timelines and cautious interpretations, can sometimes feel dry and incomplete to a public yearning for a sense of wonder. The fringe theories, by contrast, offer grand, emotionally satisfying stories that connect the site to epic sagas of lost worlds and cosmic visitors. They make the past feel more exciting and directly relevant to our own fantasies and fears. This dynamic is not unique to Newgrange. It plays out at Stonehenge, the pyramids, and Easter Island. These speculations are a testament to the enduring power of the monument itself. Newgrange is so imposing, so perfectly conceived, that it refuses to be confined to the pages of a dry academic journal. It demands a myth, and if one is not readily available, we will invent one. In doing so, we are participating in a tradition as old as the Irish myths of the Tuatha De Danann, using stories to make sense of the majestic and the mysterious, ensuring that Newgrange continues to live not just as an archaeological site, but as a vibrant, ever-evolving icon in the human imagination. But preserving a 5,000-year-old monument for the next 5,000 years is a battle against a relentless and ever-changing set of enemies. The very act of sharing Newgrange with the world introduces its greatest modern threat, us. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors make the pilgrimage to the Boyne Valley, and while their footsteps are a testament to the site's enduring power, they also place an immense strain on its delicate fabric. The most significant impact occurs inside the chamber itself. This space was designed to be a sealed, stable environment, its temperature and humidity regulated by the incredible insulation of thousands of tons of earth and stone. But when groups of people enter, they bring the outside world with them in a very literal sense. Each person exhales moisture and carbon dioxide, and their body heat raises the temperature. In a confined, stone-lined space with limited air circulation, this creates a microclimate shock. Humidity levels can spike dramatically during a tour, and this moisture condenses on the cold stone surfaces. Over time, this repeated cycle of wetting and drying can cause irreversible damage. It can lead to the crystallization of salts within the stone, a process that slowly forces the rock to crumble and flake apart from the inside. Even more alarming is the potential for biological growth. The increased humidity and warmth, combined with the nutrients introduced by dust and skin cells from visitors, can create the perfect conditions for algae, fungi, and lichens to take hold on the ancient carved surfaces. These microscopic organisms can etch their way into the stone, permanently obscuring the delicate spiral and lozenge patterns that have survived for millennia. It is a cruel irony that our breath, the very symbol of life, could contribute to the slow erosion of this sacred art. Beyond the immediate chamber, the entire landscape faces a broader, more unpredictable threat: climate change. The stable, cool, and damp Irish climate that has helped preserve Newgrange for 50 centuries is becoming increasingly volatile. Climate models predict more intense and frequent periods of heavy rainfall for Ireland. For a massive earthwork like Newgrange, water is the primary agent of decay. The mound is not solid rock, it is a carefully constructed layering of soil, turfs, and stone. Torrential rain can saturate the soil, increasing its weight and putting immense pressure on the internal stone structure, including the corbelled roof and the passage walls. This saturation can also lead to soil slippage and erosion on the mound's steep sides, potentially undermining the curbstones that hold the entire structure together. On the other end of the spectrum, climate change also brings the risk of hotter, drier summers. Prolonged drought can cause the clay-rich soils to shrink and crack, creating fissures that allow even more water to penetrate deep into the mound during the next downpour, creating a destructive cycle of swelling and contraction. These temperature fluctuations don't just affect the earth, they also stress the ancient stones themselves. The constant expansion and contraction from temperature swings can widen existing hairline fractures in the great orthostats and curbstones, threatening the structural integrity that has held firm since the Stone Age. The builders designed Newgrange to withstand the predictable rhythms of the Irish weather, but they could never have anticipated the extreme and erratic patterns of an anthropogenically altered climate. Faced with these complex challenges, the guardians of Newgrange have implemented a multi-layered strategy of careful management and constant vigilance. The most direct tool is the strict control of visitor numbers. Unlike an open-access park, access to the chamber is limited to small, guided tours, with a set number of people allowed inside each day. This isn't done to be exclusive, but to be protective. By limiting the human load, managers can minimize the spikes in humidity and carbon dioxide that each group introduces, giving the chamber's natural environment time to recover between visits. Inside the chamber itself, a sophisticated network of environmental sensors operates silently, continuously monitoring temperature, relative humidity, and carbon dioxide levels. This real-time data is crucial, allowing conservators to understand exactly how the chamber responds to visitors and to adjust tour schedules or group sizes if certain environmental thresholds are approached. The preservation effort extends to the very path you walk on. The modern pathways and the design of the visitor flow are carefully planned to prevent soil erosion around the base of the mound, protecting the vital curbstones from being exposed or undermined by countless footsteps. Even the decision to protect the magnificent entrance stone with a glass panel, while altering the visual experience, is a necessary sacrifice to prevent 5,000 years of weathering from being accelerated by the touch of millions of hands. Every management decision is a delicate balancing act, weighing the public's right to experience this wonder against the absolute imperative to preserve it. The long-term preservation of Newgrange is a commitment that stretches into a future we can scarcely imagine. It requires not just managing the visitors of today, but anticipating the threats of the next century. Conservation science is therefore a continuously evolving field at Brú na Bóinne. Researchers are studying the specific mineralogy of the stones to better understand their vulnerabilities. They are experimenting with non-invasive techniques to monitor the health of the corbelled roof from within, ensuring its stability without needing to disturb it. There is ongoing research into the potential for using subtle, passive ventilation systems that could help regulate the chamber's atmosphere without compromising its structural or aesthetic integrity. The fight against climate change is a global one, but on a local level, managers are exploring ways to make the landscape itself more resilient, such as planting specific types of vegetation on the mound that can help stabilize the soil without their roots damaging the hidden stonework below. This is a legacy of care that mirrors the long-term perspective of the original builders. They constructed Newgrange with the hope that it would last for eternity. Our responsibility is to use every tool at our disposal, from simple visitor limits to advanced climate science, to honor that ambition. Ensuring that the winter solstice sun continues to illuminate that back chamber for another 50 centuries is a solemn promise we make to the past and a precious gift we must secure for the future. Despite the incredible discoveries made at Newgrange, the silent stones guard their deepest secrets closely, leaving us with profound questions that continue to fuel research and debate. One of the most persistent puzzles revolves around the individuals granted the supreme honor of burial within its sacred chamber. The cremated remains of only a handful of people were found inside, a tiny fraction of the population that would have lived in the Boyne Valley over the centuries of its use. This immediately raises the question, who were these chosen few? Were they a single, powerful dynasty of chieftains, a lineage of astronomer priests who held the secret knowledge of the solstice, or perhaps individuals believed to be spiritually gifted or divinely touched? The isotopic analysis telling us that one person came from far away deepens the mystery rather than solving it. Was this individual a revered guest, a political hostage from a rival tribe, or a high-status bride or groom in a strategic marriage alliance? The tomb's exclusivity suggests a highly stratified society with a powerful elite, but the criteria for entry into this ultimate Neolithic resting place remains one of the site's most tantalizing enigmas, a silent testament to a social hierarchy we can only glimpse. Equally compelling is the riddle of the megalithic art. We can interpret the spirals, lozenges, and zigzags as symbols of rebirth, water, or the cosmos, but we lack the key to their precise grammar. Is this a symbolic language where each combination conveys a specific prayer, a mythological story, or the name and title of the person buried nearby? Or is it something more abstract, a series of maps for shamanic journeys or diagrams of cosmic energy flows intended for the spirits and deities alone? The fact that the most intricate carvings are often hidden in the deepest, darkest parts of the tomb, away from the casual gaze of the living, strongly implies their purpose was not primarily decorative. They were meant for an audience of ancestors or gods. Were these symbols a permanent, stone-bound liturgy, ensuring that the correct rituals and beliefs were eternally present in the chamber? Or do they represent a complex form of notation, encoding the astronomical knowledge needed to maintain the solstice alignment across generations? Without a Neolithic Rosetta Stone, we are left to admire the poetry of these carvings without being able to read the poem, a beautiful and enduring code that challenges our modern literal mind. The astronomical genius of Newgrange is undeniable, yet researchers continue to probe the possibility of a deeper, more complex celestial code woven into the entire Boyne landscape. The primary solstice alignment at Newgrange is spectacularly clear, but what about the potential for lunar alignments, which operate on a much longer, 18.6-year cycle? Confirming such an alignment would require painstaking observations over many years, and the evidence remains suggestive rather than conclusive. Furthermore, could the relationship between Newgrange, Noth, and Douth form a grand, integrated astronomical machine? We know each has its primary solar event: winter sunrise, equinox sunrise and sunset, and winter sunset. But when viewed as a single unit, do they create precise geometric patterns on the landscape that mirror constellations or other celestial phenomena? Some researchers are exploring whether the placement of smaller satellite tombs around the Great Mounds creates additional sight lines or markers for other solar and lunar events, creating a comprehensive calendar system far more intricate than we currently understand. The possibility remains that we have only decoded the most obvious movement of the Sun, and that a richer, more nuanced understanding of the cosmos is still locked within the arrangement of these structures, waiting for the right perspective or technology to reveal it. What makes the study of Newgrange so dynamic is that archaeology is not a static science with all the answers in a textbook. It is a living, evolving discipline where a single new discovery can overturn decades of accepted theory. The recent revelations from LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar are perfect examples, revealing a hidden landscape of monuments that has completely reset our understanding of the site's scale and complexity. The next breakthrough could come from anywhere. A future excavation in one of the newly discovered satellite tombs might uncover an artifact with unique carvings that finally helps decipher the symbolic language. A more refined isotopic analysis of the existing bone fragments could reveal detailed dietary histories, telling us if the entombed individuals shared a specific privileged diet. Even the analysis of microscopic pollen grains preserved in the chamber's soil could reveal what flowers or plants were used in burial rites, offering a glimpse into their funerary rituals. Or a physicist might develop a new acoustic modeling technique that proves the chamber was specifically tuned to amplify certain resonant frequencies for ritual trance induction. Each tiny piece of data, each new survey, is like adding a piece to a 5,000-year-old jigsaw puzzle where we are still unsure of the final picture. This is what keeps the story of Newgrange so compelling. It is not a closed book, but an ongoing narrative. The mystery is very much alive, and every year, as the winter solstice sun once again pierces the darkness, it feels less like a relic from a dead past and more like an invitation to keep looking, keep questioning, and keep unraveling the profound secrets of our shared human journey. So as we draw our journey to a close, let's gather the threads of this profound mystery. We began with a single golden beam of light piercing a 5,000-year-old darkness, and from that starting point, we uncovered a story that forever changes our perception of the ancient world. We've walked through the staggering reality of its age, a monument older than the pyramids, built by a Stone Age society without metal, without the wheel, yet possessing a vision that spanned generations. We've stood in awe of the architectural genius, from the self-supporting corbelled roof that has kept the inner chamber dry for millennia to the precisely engineered roof box, a Neolithic masterstroke that captures the winter solstice sun with the accuracy of a modern scientific instrument. This was never a structure with a single purpose. It was and remains a beautiful, complex fusion of roles. It was a tomb, a final resting place for a chosen few, connecting the living community to the powerful spirits of their ancestors. It was a temple, a sacred space where the most profound beliefs about life, death, and cosmic renewal were enacted in a dramatic 17-minute ritual of light. And it was an observatory, a colossal stone calendar that guaranteed the sun's return and the continuation of life for an entire society. This multifaceted nature is its ultimate lesson. For the people of the Boyne Valley, there was no separation between science and spirituality, between the practical need to track the seasons and the spiritual need to commune with the cosmos. Their world was an interconnected whole, and Newgrange was the beating heart of that worldview. What does this tell us about ourselves, about our shared human past? It tells a story not of a slow, linear climb from primitive to advanced, but of flashes of immense sophistication appearing in the most unexpected times and places. It speaks to a universal, enduring human drive, a drive to look up at the stars and our own sun and find our place within their grand cycles, a drive to honor those who came before us, to weave their memory into the very landscape. And perhaps most powerfully, a drive to create something that outlasts our own fleeting lives, to leave a mark on the world that whispers our story across 50 centuries. The builders of Newgrange may not have left us written records, but they left a legacy in stone and earth that speaks more eloquently than any scroll. They were not simple farmers, they were astronomers, architects, artists, and visionaries. Their achievement stands on a green hill in Ireland, a permanent invitation to wonder. It challenges us to look at the ancient world with fresh eyes, to see the brilliance and ambition that thrived long before recorded history. And it reminds us that the fundamental human questions about life, death, and our connection to the universe are timeless. Now we turn the conversation over to you. What aspect of Newgrange captures your imagination the most? Is it the sheer scale of the construction, the mystery of the spiral art, or the profound spiritual meaning behind the solstice alignment? Share your thoughts and your own questions in the comments below. We'd love to continue exploring this mystery with you. And if this journey has ignited a spark of curiosity, let it be a starting point. The world is filled with ancient wonders, from the stone circles of Orkney to the cliff palaces of Mesa Verde, each holding fragments of our collective story. Go out and explore them, whether in person or from your armchair. Seek out the whispers of the past, for in understanding these echoes, we come to understand something deeper about the enduring human spirit and our own place in the vast, beautiful tapestry of time.